she said. I need some space. Let's not talk for a while. I need to find myself. I didn't argue. Someone who truly needs space quietly steps away. They don't make it sound like a press release. I nodded, said I understood, said I would respect it. Then I started paying attention. 2 weeks later, her mum tagged her in a photo smiling under a navy umbrella, cocktail in hand, and the reflection of a man in her sunglasses. And just like that, the silence began to speak. We'd been together for 2 years. Not perfect, but steady. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. She said she liked me because I didn't flirt like a cheap act. I liked her because she didn't have to try to attract anyone. Ironically, that was the first thing she lost later. The first year was gratefully great, the kind of ordinary love you think will last. But around month 16, things started to cool. Not a bang, just erosion. A cancelled date. A cold goodnight text. A sigh, you're kind of clingy lately. I got it. People change. Relationships fade. But the way it happened, too precise. Too calculated to call it coincidence. The night she said she needed space, her voice was calm, like asking for an extra pinch of salt at dinner. No emotion, no tremor, no hint of regret. Just, I think I need a break. No contact, okay. I need to find myself. I nodded. Sure, do whatever you need. Maybe my calm surprised her. But when someone pulls away this fast, they've often planned it. And instead of begging or asking why, I started taking notes. She didn't text. Didn't respond to my messages asking about her mail. Fine, no contact meant no contact. But people always leave traces, especially digital ones. Her mum was the type to post everything: meals, shopping trips, quotes about loyalty sprinkled between wine glasses and sunsets. I didn't unfollow her. No need. Noise is useful if you know how to listen. Then, one Saturday morning, it appeared, a series of vacation photos in Cancun. Palm trees, sunlight, laughter. Samantha at the center of the frame. Radiant in the light, the kind of radiance people don't get when finding themselves. Her mom's caption, proud of my daughter for choosing happiness. And in the third photo, he was there. Face unclear, but enough to recognize. His tanned arm around her waist. Her hand resting there naturally, like it had always belonged. Comments stacked below. Finally, she's happy. Such a cute couple. She deserves love. And just like that, I understood what space to find oneself really meant. I didn't comment. Didn't call. I just screenshot everything. Photos, captions, comments, dates. When you don't react emotionally, you start seeing everything. The timeline, the gaps in the story. Her phone dead on those days. GPS location vanished. Her friends unusually silent. It all lined up. She had planned this, the speech, the silence, the vanishing act meticulously designed to avoid guilt. The irony. She could have just told the truth, that she didn't want to be with me anymore. I would have respected that. Instead, she orchestrated a retreat, called it healing. People reveal their true selves. Eventually, the question is whether you have the silence to watch. When I saw that post, I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't angry. I just saw clearly. So clearly it chilled me. And in that clarity, it was over. No breakup words needed, no drama. Just a raw fact. She never needed space. She just needed someone else. After that post, I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't reach out in any way. There was no point. The narrative had already written itself, and all I could do was trace it. People like her always leave breadcrumbs, small inconsistencies, tiny slips, little signals that only show up if you're paying attention. And now I was paying. I went back through months of messages, scrolling slowly, reading between the lines. The casual complaints, the half-hearted compliments, the sudden silences after every milestone. We reached her birthday, my promotion, the holidays. It wasn't random. It was pattern, repetition, design. Her words about needing space were just the final act of a story that had been building for months. Every cancelled plan, every postponed dinner, every awkward pause on the phone, it all made sense now. She wasn't confused. She wasn't searching. She was rehearsing. Even her friends were part of it, knowingly or not. They mirrored her tone, avoided me, dropped hints in their posts. One friend posted a blurry sunset picture on the same day Samantha's GPS went offline, tagging a quote about letting go and finding freedom. Another posted a selfie with a new guy at a cafe we had visited together months ago. Small, almost imperceptible signs, but for someone paying attention, they were loud. And the worst part, it wasn't malicious. Not really. It was calculated, yes, but with a kind of cold pragmatism. She wasn't cruel. She was strategic. She knew exactly how to minimize drama while still getting what she wanted. I stopped asking why. There were no answers there. Instead, I started cataloging, screenshots, dates, patterns, everything, if nothing else. It was a evidency record of reality stripped of excuses and excuses, made believable. Then came the occasional public posts, a quote about self-discovery, a picture in a coffee shop, a book she was reading, always with someone else subtly in the frame. Each one a signal, each one a quiet confirmation, and each one reminded me of the truth I didn't want to admit. She had moved on months before she told me she needed space. The space was never for herself, it was for him. It was strange, this clarity. No heartbreak, no rage, just understanding, like staring at a map after being lost for hours. You see the path you took, the choices, the intersections, and suddenly nothing feels accidental. Every detour, every stop, every silence, it all leads to the same destination. By the end of the second week, I had everything neatly lined up. Timelines, posts, screenshots, I could reconstruct the entire narrative in my head. And in that reconstruction, she appeared not as the person I had loved, but as the architect of a story that had no place for me. Silence, I realized, wasn't just absence. It was information. It was evidence. And when someone leaves enough of it, you don't need answers, they tell themselves. A week passed, and I remained silent. No calls, no texts, no reaching out. But I never stopped observing. In the digital world, every action leaves a trace, and when these traces are placed side by side, they create a picture far clearer than any explanation could. Every post, every like, every story she left behind was like a puzzle piece for a story only I had the patience to assemble. I began paying attention to her habits, the times she posted, the locations she checked into, the moments she liked other people's posts. Each one seemed trivial alone, but when arranged chronologically, everything followed a meticulous pattern. Nothing random, nothing accidental. Everything had been orchestrated, every detail, every minute, to create the illusion of space and finding herself. One Wednesday afternoon, I happened to see a photo she posted on Instagram. A cafe, soft golden light filtering through the windows. She was sitting with someone else. Not a stranger. Him, the man from the Cancun photo. A natural moment, laughing, hands touching. Seeing this, I realized one thing. There had been no confusion, no phase of self-discovery. It was a calculated sequence, planned down to the smallest detail, like a play where she had been the lead actor from the beginning. What was terrifying wasn't that she had deceived me, but the subtlety with which she had constructed the story. No explanations, no hint of regret, just a flawless performance of silence. She didn't just leave, she disappeared and made everyone else believe it was her choice. I remembered the cancelled dates, the sighs of "you're kind of clingy lately," the half-hearted messages. Everything now fit the map I had pieced together from posts, GPS, and friends' comments. It was all part of the plan. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I felt a stark, cold clarity, like standing in front of an undeniable reality. When you see someone reveal their true nature without saying a word, all you can do is watch. Quietly, patiently, recording. I started noticing details I had never paid attention to before. Her tone in old messages, the words she used with me versus with others, the stories she told, the photos she posted, the way she interacted with friends, all forming a refined picture of a carefully manufactured distance. She had planned every step, every day, turning everything into a story where she was the center. Then there were the evenings. I sat quietly on my chair, phone face down on the table, staring into the dark screen, reflecting on the truth. The truth that I was no longer part of her story. The truth that all talk of finding herself had been a facade. And in that silence, I felt something strange, both emptiness and clarity. Emptiness from losing a relationship I had trusted. Clarity from seeing the truth that had been hidden behind subtle lies. I reminded myself, silence is also a form of power. When someone pours their mind into their own narrative, you only need to step back and observe. Every trace reveals the truth. No arguing, no shouting, no pleading. Just watch, just understand. That night, I realized something else. Silence is not just absence. It is observation. It is seeing through. It is recognizing that in a world full of deception, sometimes the only thing speaking the truth is silence. And for the first time in months, I felt free from intricate lies, free from excuses, free from trying to understand a story that was never mine. One Friday evening, I stood in the dark room, phone face down on the table. Outside, the streetlights cast a pale glow. Cars passed by, but in this small space, everything seemed to stop. I scrolled through her latest posts. Cancun, the cafe, smiling selfies, and him always appearing somewhere in the frame. Every detail perfectly aligned. Nothing random. This time, it wasn't just observation anymore. It was confrontation. Facing the raw truth I had long tried to ignore, I started asking myself if she was truly finding herself. Why were these actions calculated down to the smallest detail? Why set up every pause, every post, every reaction of friends to make me believe a fabricated story? The answer became clear. There was no searching, no confusion. Only a meticulously orchestrated plan to get exactly what she wanted. I recalled every moment, every word, every action. The night she said she needed space, her voice calm as if adding a pinch of salt to dinner. The dry, half-hearted messages, the cancelled dates, with no explanation. And now, looking at the whole picture, I realized she had never confronted me with the truth. She had crafted the perfect silence to avoid guilt, to end the story on her terms. A strange sensation rose within me. Not heartbreak, not anger, but a chill down my spine. In the silence, everything became transparent. No words could hide the truth. No breakup, no drama needed. Just observe carefully, and you'll see. It was all planned. I sat down, hands slightly trembling, yet my mind remained eerily calm. Emotions that once felt chaotic and disappointment, heartbreaks utterly felt meaningless. I didn't need explanations, didn't need to assign blame. I only needed to know the truth, and the truth had never been clearer. I began noticing details I hadn't seen before. The tone in old messages, how she spoke to me versus to others. The stories she told, the posts she shared, the way friends interacted, all forming a refined picture of manufactured distance. Every small detail arranged to create the illusion of freedom, of finding herself. I thought about the power of silence. When someone pours all their energy into their own narrative, you only need to step back and watch. Every trace will reveal the truth. No arguing, no shouting, no pleading. Just observe, just understand. Silence isn't absence. It's observation. It's awareness. It's power. That night, I mentally mapped everything. Times, places, actions, signs, posts, comments, GPS vanish. All pieced together into a picture so clear it could make one shiver. I realized she had never needed space to heal. That space had been a perfect performance, allowing her to move on to a new chapter with no explanations. And in that silence, I felt freedom. Freedom from the facade, freedom from excuses, freedom from manipulated emotions. I was no longer part of her story, but I was the only one holding the truth. Cold, clear-headed, emotionless, only the truth and the power of silence. I closed my eyes for a long moment, took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I saw clearly. No arguing, no anger, no pleading needed. Everything had been revealed. And in that silence, I found my own strength that came from seeing the truth, standing outside the performance, and knowing I remained whole, no matter how deceptive the world outside might be. One Sunday morning, I sat in my usual cafe, sunlight streaming through the windows, falling on the worn wooden table. My phone lay face down, and I didn't bother checking it. Yet my mind kept returning to her, to the photos, the posts, the signs I had been noting for weeks. Every detail, every silence, now appeared as a completed story, waiting only for me to recognize it. What surprised me wasn't the betrayal itself, but the precision of it. Every small detail, every friend's interaction, every casual remark, every gap on her phone, it was all calculated. She didn't need explanations, didn't need feelings, only a flawless performance to make everyone, including me, believe that distance was necessary. That distance was never for me. That distance was for someone else. I looked over my mental notes. Times, places, GPS locations, posts, comments, photos. Everything aligned perfectly. Every little detail that once seemed insignificant had become evidence. I realized that everything she did wasn't random, it was a carefully orchestrated sequence. No finding herself, no hesitation, no confusion. Only deliberate choices, with someone else always in the plan. A sensation of both relief and strength arose. Relief because I finally saw clearly, no longer fooled by her silence, no longer manipulated by subtle lies. Strength, because I understood that true power lies in observation, in patience, not in clinging or pleading. I realized that silence is not failure, is a way of seeing through the truth. I recalled every moment in our relationship, the dry messages, the cancelled dates, the fleeting complaints, when paired with her posts, photos, and the disappearance of her GPS locations. Her silence and his presence painted a complete, terrifying picture. I understood that I had been drawn into a story already scripted, and she was the sole architect, but for the first time, I didn't feel anger. Not at all. I felt clarity. Clarity so vivid, it felt like rising up in my mind, as if I had been freed from a labyrinth. Everything ended without a breakup, without drama. The truth revealed it all on its own. I was no longer the victim of her performance. I was the only one holding the map of the entire story, and within that map, I remained whole. In the following days, I stopped checking her posts. I didn't need to. I had all the evidence, and more importantly, I had clarity in my mind. She moved on with her world, and I moved on with my freedom. Every step I took now was free, unburdened by intricate lies, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Not because she was gone, but because I had risen. Not because I had won, but because I had seen the truth, and within that truth, I found strength. The strength to stand outside the performance, to observe without being pulled in, to understand that silence can sometimes be the greatest power. Silence. Observation, awareness. This was how I reclaimed my own power. In a world full of deception, sometimes simply standing outside the play allows you to see everything. And when you see everything, you are no longer the victim. You remain whole, strong, and freer than ever. One Friday evening, I stood in front of the mirror in my room, the soft yellow light filtering through the window. I studied my face, eyes no longer clouded, lips no longer trembling. For the first time in months, I confronted myself not as a victim, but as an observer. I thought of her, of all the signs, posts, and silences I had recorded. Everything now converged into a complete picture only I could see. I remembered vividly the feeling when I first saw the Cancun photo, sunlight. Her smile, him standing next to her, his arm naturally around her waist. Back then, I just looked, silent, without reaction. Now, I realized silence was not meaningless. Silence allowed me to see clearly, to understand that she had never found herself. That distance was the perfect act. A performance designed to move on to a new chapter with someone else. A surge of internal clarity came over me, not anger, not despair, but a cold, sharp illumination. Every cancelled date, every half-hearted message, every fleeting complaint now made sense within the full picture. I could see the precision of the plan. Every gap, every silence, every word had a purpose. I stood there, hands clenched, taking a deep breath. For the first time, I asked myself, how would I react if she showed up in front of me with him beside her? But then I smiled, real, genuine smile this time. I didn't need confrontation, arguing, or pleading. I had stood outside the performance long enough to realize power doesn't lie in holding on to someone, but in understanding and keeping yourself intact. I pulled out my phone, reviewing old messages, posts, photos, vanished GPS locations, and friends' comments. Everything matched perfectly, chillingly so. I took screenshots, saved them, but not to share or report. This wasn't for revenge. It was to prove to myself I had seen the truth. I had witnessed the whole thing, and I still stood strong. A wave of relief spread through me. Relief that I was no longer manipulated by subtle lies. Relief that I had finally seen her true nature. Strength, because I realized true power lies in observation, in silence, in confronting the truth without letting emotions take control. For the first time, I felt real power, the power of understanding and inner freedom. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. No more anger, no more despairingly clarity, freedom and strength. She could move on to her new chapter, and I could too. But I walked forward with complete awareness, the full map of the story in my hands, confident that I remained whole, regardless of the performances around me. And in that moment, I knew silence was not submission. Silence is observation. Silence is power. And for the first time in months, I felt freer than ever before. Asterisk. The next morning, I opened the window and took a deep breath. The city was waking up with its familiar sounds. Cars passing, birds singing, people chatting as they walked. Everything looked the same, yet inside me, the world had changed completely. I was no longer caught in her performance, no longer confused by posts, glances, or fabricated excuses. I had seen the full story clearly, and I was moving forward with complete awareness. Over the past weeks, I had taken notes, observed, screenshot, and saved every trace. But now, all of it was no longer evidence or a tool for revenge. It was simply a map leading me to the truth that she had never needed space to heal, that the distance had been a performance, a way for her to step into a new chapter with someone else. I realized that true power doesn't lie in holding on, pleading, or explaining. It lies in observation and patience to see the true nature of things. I thought back to the early days with her, the small, ordinary moments, the smiles, the outings, the brief but warm messages. Those were real. But then the fading, the calculation, the orchestrated silences taught me a lesson no classroom could. Not everyone is honest, and not every distance comes from good intentions. I sat down, holding a warm cup of coffee, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. Peace not because she was gone, but because I understood. I understood that I had stood strong, I had seen the truth, and I was still whole. She could move into her new world, and I could move into meaner world untouched by manipulation or lies. A world where I controlled myself. What happened with her was no longer a burden. The lessons I had learned from the distance, from the silence, from the complete picture of the story, had become inner strength. I learned to observe others without losing myself. I learned to stand outside the performance and realize that silence is not submission, it is power. Observation is not passive. It is the way to understand, to be free. I walked down the familiar streets, seeing everything ordinary but strikingly beautiful. The everyday sounds, the daylight, the smell of coffee and pastries from the shops. Everything felt real, unfiltered, untouched by any performance. I smiled, not at her, but at myself, at the strength of clarity, at the ability to stand in the truth, and at the freedom I had reclaimed. And finally, I realized the most important thing. Life isn't always fair, but you can still keep yourself intact. You can observe, understand, and move forward without being manipulated. The truth always exists, and real power is the ability to see it, stand outside the performance, and continue living with trust in yourself. I put my phone down, no longer checking social media. I no longer cared what she was doing, no longer drawn into her orchestrated stories. I stepped outside, breathed the morning air deeply, and for the first time in months, I felt completely free in the truth, free in the silence, free in myself, and in that silence, I found the greatest lesson. Sometimes you don't need someone to explain or apologize. You only need yourself. And when you stand firm in the truth, you will feel the power, the clarity, and the freedom that nothing can take away.